story this morning is the U.S. Treasury. It's expected to confirm today that the U.S. has reached its debt ceiling, the legal borrowing limit. So we're giving you a live look now at Capitol Hill. Republicans, Democrats, and the White House are in a standoff. The GOP wants budget cuts before voting to increase the limit. And Democrats say that risks a government default and a wider financial collapse. So we're going to explain what's going on. I want to bring in CBS News reporter Sarah Ewall-Wice to break it all down for us. She's following the story from Washington. Sarah, good to see you. All right, so let us start with, where things stand now in terms of the negotiations.
Well, good morning. Right now, I think it's still a bit of a game of chicken here, and it really hasn't cleared up on how they're going to move forward. Of course, Speaker McCarthy talking about making a deal, but one that reins in spending. And he talks in reference to a previous negotiation that happened when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker and President Trump was in the White House. So he goes back and says that's what we're looking at. We can do a deal in that way. But it really comes down to the numbers and who we have in Congress. Now we have a Republican majority House, a Democrat majority Senate, and of course a Democrat President Joe Biden in the White House. So these three groups these different groups need to get together and they need to come to a deal. Right now, what we do know is the Treasury Department projected that the United States would hit the debt limit today. And once that happens, then that really seals up the borrowing limit. What then happens is the Treasury kicks in what are so-called extraordinary measures. Not so extraordinary anymore because it seemed to happen on a regular basis, but at one point those were extremely unusual. And really what that meant is not investing certain funds so that they're able to keep paying the bills in the meantime until the cash finally runs out. The cash could run out as soon as June, according to the Treasury Department. So we have until about June to reach a deal. But of course, investors and leaders of parties and economists all say this needs to happen sooner rather than later. And the Treasury Secretary said that in a letter last week to leaders in Congress.
So right now, it doesn't seem like there's an end game, a plan here. Congressman Jim Clyburn sat down with our Bob Costa and asked him if Democrats should hold the line or if they should give in to spending cuts. And this is what he said.
I do believe that you ought to always be willing to make compromises, but you can't not compromise your principles. You cannot compromise the full faith and credit of the United States of America. And on principle, Democrats are not going to agree to anything that would jeopardize Social Security, Medicare, these kinds of issues that are there when the American people, they pay into Social Security, they pay into Medicare.
All right. So what do these negotiations look like? What does either side have to give?
It comes down to how much they're going to be able to rein in spending as a part of this. Republicans have used this as a negotiating tool numerous times over the past couple of decades. But at the end of the day, they've always reached a deal, and that deal has always raised or suspended the debt limit before the United States went into default. The United States has never gone into default. I think it's important, Congressman Clyburn references also in this. He says they're not going to negotiate. Democrats are not going to negotiate on, as he said, Social Security, Medicare. But he did note that there were maybe other places where the United States has some spending where they could reach some compromises. So there could be some spending cuts in the works. What it does come down to is the math and whether there are some hardline Republicans who are simply not going to do this. And so it will end up having to be a compromise potentially between a smaller group of Republicans and Democrats, even though Republicans control the House at this time, to avoid the default. So it's really a game of chicken and also a game of where do we have these numbers right now. And we're just too soon to really be able to tell, even if we hit the limit today.
You pointed out that we've been here several times, and I don't blame people if they just sort of zone out when they hear about this because it never really ends up in a default. But the political landscape now is a little different. Can you explain why right now, some investors may be quite tense watching this unfold?
Well, there are some Republicans who have essentially signal that maybe it's time to go there. We've never been there before where the United States is going into default. And so with these tight margins and these hardliners, we're in a different place than we've ever been before. I mean, just looking at the speaker vote, it took 15 votes for Speaker McCarthy to clinch that speaker to become speaker. So there is a lot of different factors here that we haven't seen in the past. But what I will say is investors get nervous early on. This doesn't have to wait all the way till June when the money runs out before we see economic ramifications. Thinking back to just 2011, we saw as they kind of went into the midnight hours ahead of hitting a default in those negotiations when President Obama was in office with Republicans, we saw a dip in the stock markets. And even before that, the United States went into default, then the S&P ended up downgrading the United States credit rating for the first time ever. And that actually had massive ramifications. It builds uncertainty not just in the U.S. financial markets, but in the global financial markets, because the United States is supposed to be the one that everyone trusts. So that is a challenge, and that is something that could happen sooner than June, as there are these uncertainties in terms of negotiations. But the other thing that happens is if the United States goes into default, there are multiple bills that will not get paid, and that could include things that everyone sees every day, like those Social Security payments, like pay for veterans. So once we get to that mark, things continue to escalate until we get what is called by Secretary Yellen a catastrophe.
It certainly would be, Sarah. Thank you.